Anyhow, folks, are you ready for your first comic? Are you ready? Her first comic, she has worked tirelessly to make this group happen, doing a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes. So let's give her a big hand. Give it up for Susan Rogers.
Hi, and let's give it up for David Raniere. Well, if this works out, then all the time I spent in therapy and being locked up on a psych ward will have served some useful purpose after all. Of course, if you don't laugh, I'm going to get very depressed. But no pressure. So in 1975, when I was slightly more depressed than usual, my sister-in-law knocked on my door with an outreach team from the local psych ward. They came in and they looked around my apartment and they saw the squalor, and they offered me two equally bad choices: check into the hospital or clean my apartment. Well, I picked the hospital. I figured they probably had janitors.
All right.
In the year between my two psychiatric hospitalizations, I tried to kill myself twice, but I wasn't very good at it. So I decided to try hitchhiking. I had this idea, maybe I'll get lucky and I'll be picked up by a serial killer. Well, no killer stopped for me, but I did get a ride from an engineering grad student who almost bored me to death. So I gave up on suicide and I decided to try living, and I moved into a political collective in New Jersey. If you don't know what a political collective is, it's just like a group home, except instead of making collages and gluing little tiles on poster board, the inmates run for Congress. Ironically, this one congressional candidate said he'd been in and out of mental hospitals for years. No surprise there, given what's going on in Washington these days. Of course, we immediately got engaged. But I just... This is all true. The people who know me know that. But I didn't tell my parents that my fiancé was 5 years younger than I was, or that he had been, that he was a card-carrying communist, or that he had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. I figured it was bad enough he wasn't Jewish. Actually, I'm not really an observant Jew, so instead of being Jewish, I'm probably more Jew-ish. But I shouldn't have worried that my parents would find my husband's psychiatric diagnosis scary. They were New Yorkers, and in New York City, having psychological problems is practically mandatory. In fact, if you run into somebody on the street in New York City and he doesn't have a psychological problem, he's probably a tourist. Actually, New York City may be the only place in the world where the birth certificates have a space for psychiatric diagnosis. So my husband and I broke up in 1991. Coincidentally, that was the same year that the Soviet Union broke up. At least I think it was a coincidence. So now I live with my partner, Herb. Herb was one of the maintenance guys in my apartment complex. One day, he asked me out dancing. But his invitation gave me cognitive dissonance. On the one hand, I thought, well, this guy must know how to dance. On the other hand, I thought, but how can I go out with somebody that's got the key to my apartment before our first date? But I said yes because apparently I like dancing more than I value my safety. By the way, when I told a young single friend that I had met Herb in my apartment, she got very upset and she said, but my mother says I won't meet anyone in my apartment. So Herb doesn't get depressed and he doesn't get manic, but we do have something in common. We're both carbon-based life forms. On second thought, he does have a psychiatric diagnosis, hoarding disorder. Now, he doesn't hoard trash like on those TV shows. Instead, he hoards ceramic ashtrays and glass paperweights and antique bedpans. Basically, a lot of useless stuff. Actually, we can use the bedpans, especially when the door to the bathroom is blocked by the ashtrays and the paperweights. But I stopped worrying about the hoarding thing when a New York Times article made a distinction between hoarding and insatiable collecting. They said that insatiable collecting means that the stuff may pile up, but at least it won't attract roaches. In other words, the only things in our house that are organic and rotting are us.